Welcome back to Full Court Press Fast Break News' show to bring you amazing content all MLQ season long. I'm Whitney Ho.
And my name is Nicholas Love, and want to start off the episode by saying apologize about last week. Climate change is real. We also had busy lives, so we do apologize for last week, but we are bringing you an incredible episode today talking about a lot of things that have happened over the past 2 weeks. So we're going to get straight into it, starting off with a recap of 2 weeks ago series, starting with Chicago and Toronto. Whitney, walk us through how you felt about that series. Who were some of your standout players for that entire series?
Well, I mean, I think we just have to acknowledge the fact that this series went how pretty much everybody expected it to. And, I don't want to just sit here and flame Toronto the whole time because I was happy that we got to see Toronto play. And we will talk about Toronto later. But for the time being, let's focus on Chicago. I think Chicago came out and took care of business, had some players put up some great stats. We'll also talk about stats later, okay? MLQ. You got some explaining to do. But besides that, multiple players putting up more than 5 goals. Highlights being Braden Gunther, Riley Andrews, Kevin, Liam. Great performance all around from multiple Chicago players. Really happy to see them take care of business and head into, Central Conference champs with their number one seed in their division.
Yeah, I thought both Chicago and Toronto looked good at great a lot of points in this game, as well as they didn't look good, as well as Toronto didn't look good at a lot of points in this game as well. I think it was a lot closer than I think a lot of people expected. But that being said, I still think it was a great series. Like Chicago was able to play through a lot of depth, get a lot of people in, and let them freely play quad ball, in which I really enjoyed. Sometimes it didn't fully always work out, or the pass didn't connect, or a drop pass here and there, but I can expect that once we get into conference champs, like all that's going to be out the window, and like Chicago's going to really be about their execution. For Toronto, when we played them in their series, like they didn't look anywhere near as composed, particularly on defense as well as their transition offense. Like I thought that was a lot better compared to when they played us during our exhibition, and so I thought Toronto looked good at a lot of points in this game, and I was excited. Like we're about to see them at conference championships. Like I was really excited after that, and so I thought it was really good performance from both Chicago and Toronto for that for sure.
Definitely. And we have another very, very big announcement. I think this is the third one ever, our third ever full court press unanimous MVP. We've elected to give this one to Riley Andrews, 9 goals, and assists, and 11 stops. Truly deserved. Truly deserved. So bravo.
Yeah, Riley was all over the field, whether it was like communicating with their voice, asking for the ball, telling them where safe space was, or whether it was just being active and getting hands on balls and people on the ground. Like Riley was all over the place. It was definitely a great anchor for the team throughout the entire series. And so Riley played a hell of a series for sure. So that's, another unanimous golf claps, you know, let Riley know how much you're proud of them and excited to see them going into champs.
Definitely, definitely. So, before we move on to our recap of the other series 2 weeks ago, which is Boston versus New York, we should talk about Toronto because we just received some big news from MLQ, and it is that Toronto is forfeiting essentially the rest of their season. So Nick, how are you feeling about that?
I mean, it's tough, right? Um, Toronto was, especially this year, was like kind of the embodiment of just like Quad Ball Canada. I think if you had told me that they were forfeiting their series after they played our exhibition against us and didn't get to play Chicago, like I would have felt like maybe they just felt like competitively, like it just wasn't worth their time and their effort and their money to be able to travel to these different places. Like I can kind of understand that, but like it really sucks because like go put up such a good performance against, Chicago. And I think if you went out and you played mini, I think that could have been a split series if you played how you did against Chicago. And then you could have tested against Houston, who I don't know who Houston's going to be bringing to Eastern Conference Championships. Like, I think it's tough. Maybe there's some things that are happening within the culture that are preventing Quad Ball Canada and Toronto from traveling to these places or, financial things. Completely understand. But it's just a blow for like the actual MLQ like community, for the entire like franchises to be able to like, communicate with each other and say like we're gonna show up to these tournaments and then like you just back out. Like it kind of sucks there because we want this to be the highest level of quad ball, particularly in North America. So like I don't know. Maybe that's just going to open up opportunities for another franchise to pop up somewhere else where they're trying to revive. Maybe there's a Austin coming back with, more Texas programs coming in. Maybe there's another quad ball scene popping up in Maryland. Who knows? But I think it sucks. Like, and I'm not trying to put blame on anybody because I don't know the ins and outs of Toronto's program, but definitely sad to see.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't want to say I didn't see this coming because, I had a feeling at the beginning of Full Court Press when we had just gotten the news that Toronto had forfeited their series against Mini, I had this whole thing typed out about all of my different thoughts on Toronto and, the future of Quad Ball Canada in the league. And that's the question that I feel like should be the most important thing right now is where do we go from here? I think having Quad Ball Canada in MLQ is awesome. I love having, the different continents being represented. It feels like NBA to me, it gives it that little edge. But, if Quad Ball Canada can't consistently like come to the US, that's just how are we supposed to work around that? Like what can you really do besides, pausing operations on the franchise? But that's like never something that you want to see happen. And I understand like everybody has their own reasons, and obviously all of those reasons are valid. Like we're not gonna say like, oh my God, you guys suck for not coming to the US. Like we get it, we understand. But at some point, like if you want to continue being involved in MLQ, we have to make a change. And that was something that we saw, especially with MLQ releasing all of Toronto's staff. So, going into next year, really interested to see how the league is gonna look and hopefully that this won't affect the league too much. But, we're getting a little deep into it. So let's move on to Boston versus New York. Nick, how did this series go?
Yeah. So in our like independent chats, when I was watching this series, the first thing that I said was like, I'm this entire montage video, just like I did for Washington, because of how sloppy Boston looked in a lot of ways, because of how poor a lot of their execution was, and because Boston didn't pass to a lot of their women when they were open, point blank, period. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to put that montage together. Give me a couple weeks, and I'll feel more entitled, and have some free time, and I'll put that together, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And maybe I'll add some clips here in post editing. Who knows? Maybe I will, but just looks sloppy. And I know Boston can play a lot better than they showed against New York, particularly in their quad ball game. For their beaters, I think it was just you were making long range beats that you just couldn't make, and that were just creating unfortunate turnovers for dodgeballs. Chasers were able to get loose on New York and just get easy goals. And so, like, if Boston can play tighter, you can play closer games. If you want to play sloppy and not pass the ball or decide to make 30 feet long range beats, then you're probably going to lose games. I think New York still played very similar to how they did Washington. I think at points in the game, it was very like slow. I think at a lot of points, it kind of got sloppy, but New York was able to execute when they needed to, and that's all that matters in MLQ. It's not about how the goals get in or what the actual end score is, as long as you win the game. And New York has been able to like prove that game in and game out. So I'm not necessarily worried about them, especially as they're going to Eastern Conference champs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Actually, no, no, we won't. That's in 2 weeks. But I still think they look good, and so I think they play well.
Yeah, I definitely am going to echo that. I think that it sucks to see Boston like this because we saw them, just a few weeks ago against Washington, and they had a great performance against Washington. And, when you compare these two, you're like, wow. But I don't want to just dog on Washington or on Boston this whole time. This whole time, I think they have some good elements. We know that they can perform. We know that they can win big games in big moments. We know they have a really solid seeking core. And that's sometimes what you need to take away games in like these final high intensity moments, especially going into both, conference champs and MLQ champs. But another thing about New York though is similarly to Boston when we have, this huge scale on how they can play, we haven't seen New York at full strength, at least not in my opinion. We haven't seen New York bring out all the big dogs, all of them have a great game and seen what they really can do. So I'm really looking forward to conference champs and seeing how, they play against some other teams in the league, and especially going into MLQ champs and seeing, what can they really do? They're ranked number one, but if they continue to just kind of go evenly, should they stay as number one? We don't know. You should tell us. Comment down below. But, going off back to our MVPs, I'm gonna have to shout out Vinny Iannucci. I thought he had a great series, 2 catches. I don't know how many goals because again, we don't have stats in MLQ, but shout out Vinny, amazing series. Definitely came in clutch when New York needed them the most and definitely deserved.
Yeah. My choice for MVP was pretty easy. Lindsey Morella had a great series, both on defensively, but particularly offensively, like finishing goals and being in the right spots, making the right passes. Um, just execute it. And that's what New York needed in a lot of ways. To be able to make that extra pass to get that goal where sometimes they stalled out before that extra pass. And so I thought Lindsay played great and definitely well deserved. Again, I don't have official stats because I don't know how many assists you had because they don't log that in Quad Ball 1. But again, had a great series. But also one thing before we transition into this week's, um, this is one more thing on Boston. I'm sorry. There was a point, I don't remember exactly which game. The game was very close in a front period. Will Richardson did not play both in the chasing game or get some seeker looks, and I was confused. Like I'm not a coach for Boston, but I would love to know why Will wasn't in the game. I turn around for half a second, turn back in. Will is in a chasing game. Had an opportunity to catch. Like I feel like Will to me is one of the if they get a look at the seeker for like 30 seconds, like in spurts, like you're gonna catch. I just see I don't see why Will isn't on rotation in that. I understand like they have great depth. I would have loved to see Will in there. And again, Will was also extremely productive in the quad ball game. And you needed Will there too. And Will got goals during that prop period. So like I think you have to figure that out there, particularly when it comes to prop. And maybe once you get the Eastern Conference, things will look different when you play Detroit. And then depending on winner losses in there, either going to go play Charlotte or going to go play the winner of Cleveland and who's the third? Washington, whoever that might be. But again, I just think something has to give in that prop period, and we have to find some production in a lot of different places. But I'm done. I'm done.
Very valid criticism, valid criticism. And using that to transition into our Detroit versus Cleveland series, some stuff happened, and I'm just gonna let you take point on that one, Nick. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, again, we're 11 minutes in, about 12. I'm going to try to keep it brief because we still want to talk about some more stuff. This was a tough series for a lot of reasons, right? Games were supposed to start at 3:30, get through the first game. Cool. It was extremely hot. People were about to pass out. There was a lot going on. Boom, lightning delay. We're there for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours in a lightning delay, right? We got to get back home at the same time, right? It's a 3.5 hour drive, depending on where you are, could be 4.5. It's a long drive. It's a little bit long, right? It's about 5:30, 6:30. We're about to start game time. We start game two, another lightning delay. I'm, I'm ready to go home. I am ready to go home. We are talking with the league. We're like, we're about to win these first 2 games. And then, like, can we just forfeit the third? Like, we need to get home. We were able to finish game two, get into game three, and things got hairy from there. I think a lot of it came with just like our composure as a team. I think we were just like so hyped up and excited from our wins that like it kind of just fell off the rails in a lot of ways, and we let like our hustle and our energy turn into unproductive plays across the board, and which is not necessarily productive, especially as we're going into conference champs. Like we want to be making sure that we're channeling our energy in productive ways. And so that's kind of our focus over the next couple of weeks. I think a lot of our players play great, particularly Sarah Dykstra. Rob Butler had a lot of great stops. John Jackson, both as a keeper and as a middle hoop defender, was literally all over the ball in a lot of places. And so I think we played really well. For Cleveland, I think the same thing applied. I think a lot of their offense, particularly, just ran through Joe and through Titus. Jack Mosley also had like a great series as well because Jack was on the receiving end of a lot of those passes from Joe and from Titus. But it seemed like just like a 2-man game, honestly, in which like we're just gonna apply some pressure. We were able to dominate in the beater game. And so, like, if we can take your beaters out of the equation and isolate a particular player, like we felt confident in being able to take away everyone else, in which Cleveland has to find ways to go about that, right? If we're isolating players like that, we have someone else has to handle that ball, and maybe it's in the formation, maybe it's about just how they set up or how they initiate offenses. But I think that was, really a struggle for them when they sat down in the half court, because when they did get, moving in transition, I thought they played really well, and getting out in transition and trying to get those turnovers as well. So I think like Cleveland is a good team. I just think they're just like one step away strategy wise to being a lot more competitive. And I think you saw a difference between Charlotte when they were running that 2-2 and everyone was just taking shots on them, getting those taps off versus what they saw like when they played against us, especially like during game two and how like the score was I think 5-2 going into Frog. So like I think Cleveland is a great team. I think Detroit's a great team. I just think there's a lot of things on both ends to clean up before heading into champs.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to see a rivalry matchup, you know. Obviously, some other factors were in play here. For example, the air quality. Guys,
Yeah,
climate
that too.
change, it's real. It is real. But, in light of all of this, Nick has elected to not give an MVP. But I'm going to because my MVP deserves it. My MVP is Nicholas Love. Yay! And the reason why is because after that second red card in game three, he was out there hooping. Guys, did you see him put up 4 goals in like 3 minutes? That was crucial, contributed to the game three win. Like he said, he wanted to go home and he took care of business. So congratulations, Nick Love.
Yeah. I appreciate that the nomination. For me, honestly, like I just wanted to go home. Like I didn't care. It was we had two yellow cards, then a red card, then another red card. Like the air quality started getting worse again. And for those that don't know, we were actually thinking we were on the verge of canceling our series against Cleveland in the beginning because of the air quality. So like I was ready to go home. It was late. We had another like 4 hour drive back home. I just wanted to go sleep in my bed. And so whatever I needed to do to score, we had to get it done. So I'm glad we came out the win, second seed going to Eastern Conference champs, and I got to go home that night. That's all that matters.
Awesome, awesome. You know, with that, while Detroit and Ohio were having problems with air quality, a couple of days ago, Texas was getting flooded. So now we come down to San Antonio versus Kansas City, where thankfully the floods had somewhat ended at that point. But Kansas City took out I don't want to say upset because it wasn't an upset. They ranked higher than San Antonio, but I think a lot of people saw the roster, saw the Kansas City roster heading down to Texas and was like, whoa there, guys, what are we doing? And, I know for a fact that the two of us, we said San Antonio would win, and we were proven wrong. So, Nick, what happened?
Yeah. Pregame, I was like 2-1 San Antonio. I like looking at the KC roster, I was just like, I don't. If I'm not mistaken, they only brought 5 women, and I'm like, for a series as intense as what I expect it to be, this is about to be tough, right? And it was. Don't get me wrong, it was tough on a lot of levels. It was extremely hot, back and forth. You could tell it got some chippy at a couple points during the game, but Casey was able to pull it out. And honestly, I think it really came down to that front management and how like when you have Ryan Mahio in the game and we can just barrel through people and get stops and then just give the ball to Riley Usami and score. It they San Antonio didn't have an answer for it. They really didn't, and that's what it came down to. And so Casey had a great series, like really persevered through what I believe to be a very tough roster going in, and maybe that's like we need to give some more respect to Casey and whoever they bring, and maybe we need to put them back in number one. Because again, we're not looking at their full roster, and they took down in game two and three San Antonio pretty handily. So maybe we need to give some more respect to Casey.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed with how this series turned out, and I think, it just came down to San Antonio not really playing that well. And I hate to say it, but that's genuinely what happened, guys. I love you, but that's what happened. And I I got to give it to KC. They had a couple players come up really big in big moments. We talked about Riley Usami. We're also going to talk about KJ a little bit later on, but great performances from them. And the thing that I wanted to talk about the most in terms of this matchup and also the rest of the matchups that have been happening throughout the Southwest is the art of seeking. I feel like not a lot of teams nowadays have somebody who is a very solid, dedicated seeker. Like, maybe somebody like Vinny who can go in and play chaser too and is a really solid chaser. But Vinny, that's a secret. You put Vinny on when you want a flagpole. And, I feel like the Southwest, especially, we've been seeing this in the Legends for years. And now we're really starting to see it in San Antonio, where they don't have one reliable seeker that they're like, hey, this is your job. You're going to go out and do this. And, that's a constant in the game plan. And honestly, Kansas City, they have a really good front game. They have multiple seekers that they can rely on. And I don't want to diminish David Avila's snitch catch in game one because it was amazing. I haven't seen a David Avila snitch catch in years. But at the end of the day, like we need to continue developing seekers. If we don't have someone that can at least be a threat in that part of the game, you're opening yourself up to constantly, driving up and trying to fight back and, break down a loss. Like you're down and you need to come back up. That's 35 points that I feel like more teams nowadays aren't taking advantage of.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like kind of like a fault of some sorts for the South. Like it's just no dogs down there that are in the second game that are playing this year. Let me be clear.
Yes, yes. We
That
have
are
dogs in
playing
USQ, but
this
in
year.
MLQ, it's like, whoa, I don't know.
Like it's a little scarce, a little shisty in MLQ, particularly in the South, right? In which thinking about once we get into conference championships, like when you're going against Minneapolis, who has seekers, we're going to Chicago, who has seekers. Like it's tough, right? Chicago has a list of them. New York has a list of them, right? Boston has a list of them. Charlotte has a list of them. Like there are teams across the league that have like a seeker room, right? The South doesn't really have that, and so that's definitely like a point of emphasis for like a lot of college teams. So like, hey, we got to start training some seekers that like actually enjoy seeking, right? I think it's kind of a lost art. Because
It
I remember I
is.
was talking with Jack one day about how like he was nervous about like the USNT or the DA not having enough seekers, right? They're looking for people to seek, but in college, like the past couple of finals, like you haven't been getting catches, or a lot of the games you're not getting catches against like quality like snitches. I think this is a great opportunity if you're in college buck and you're like, I want to make that DA, you better put on a yellow and get to work because I think it's a solid opportunity there. So yeah, I think it was tough, but overall, I still think San Antonio had a solid series. Right, they're still I think way better than Boston. I still think they have the opportunity to punch up against teams. Whether or not they could have just played the best team in MLQ, we don't know that yet. And so I think San Antonio is still in a great spot. They just have to figure out what's happening in that prop game. That's really what it is.
Yep, agreed. Agreed.
Yep.
So, MVPs, you want to go first?
I'm giving two because I abstained from my first one. My first one is going to be Miguel Esparza. 15 goals, all quad ball one. You just find a way to put the ball through the hoop. That's what San Antonio needed. They needed a little bit more and some more defense, but you still put it through 15 times. I got to give you that's 15 goals right there. But my other one is going to be KJ coming up with this catch. Like the meme on the Reddit was hilarious, right? You just see KJ in the back holding up the flag, and Chris and Baldy are standing there pointing at Shannon. Like that's absolutely hilarious. Like can't even say anything about it. And so very, very great job, KJ, for getting that catch. And also got a couple goals from quad ball one as well. I'm not sure about assists or stops because again, MLQ, we don't have any stats. So great catch, KJ.
Yep, I'm gonna echo that. I guess a second full court press unanimous MVP. I'm gonna give mine to KJ as well. Just talk about the ultimate utility player. KJ has been having an amazing season so far, showing up in all three positions. It's actually insane. Okay. And we need to talk about that more, especially, a woman doing all that and being such a huge anchor for their team. Very, very happy to see that. Miguel was in my honorable mentions, 15 goals, pretty insane. Definitely, needed the leadership when, the Soldados were struggling. And even though they weren't able to pull out the series win, I think, Miguel did a great job, had a great performance, and there's definitely room to grow, but we're optimistic.
Yeah, 100%. And also one thing from MLK replay, Vince said we just got to get KJ in the green, and then KJ get a couple stops there. Beautiful, right? Uh, KJ might win MVP down in the South, to be honest. But I'm not on that voting panel, but KJ would definitely be in my list for sure.
Definitely. Okay, we got a big week coming up. Central Conference champs coming up, and all six of our, or actually, no, sorry, five of the six of our Central Conference teams will be playing this week. We got some huge matchups. So, Nick, let's start off.
Big one. Well, actually, let me take it back. Houston beat Toronto off forfeits. Houston has moved on to the second round. The two seeds, which happen to be Minneapolis because of the Toronto forfeits, as well as San Antonio get to play, right? I think based on what I saw from Minneapolis versus Chicago, I don't think that series is going to be close by any means. I just don't think it will. And so I'm going to give San Antonio a 2-0 sweep pretty handily. Um, we'll talk about fantasy a little bit later, but I think that'll be, a pretty easy sweep there. Then to go play Houston, we saw what that matchup looked like a little bit earlier in the season. I think San Antonio is going to be a little bit more polished, and then they're going to win that series 2-1, maybe. I don't know. We don't have rosters. I don't know who people are bringing, but Houston, I think, looked really good at a lot of points, particularly in that San Antonio series. I'm going to give them at least one game, maybe a little bit wrong for their money.
I think San Antonio, if they win against Minnie will play Houston.
Oh, you are so right. Many will play Houston, and with Houston is going to sweep 2-0. I don't know what I'm talking about. Houston's going to get that sweep in that second round versus Minneapolis. I think Minneapolis is going 0-4 on the weekend. San Antonio, when they beat Minneapolis, will then go on to play the winner of KC versus
The
Chicago.
loser, yes, the loser. We'll put the
Who's
bracket up for you guys. We'll put it up. We'll put it
Yeah,
up.
I'm over here tweaking. The winner of Chicago versus KC is going to be tough, right? Again, don't have rosters at the current moment. I don't know who Chicago's bringing. I don't know who KC is bringing, right? But I think if they were to bring their top rosters to both, I'm gonna go with KC for the sole reason is I want to see great parity. I think KC has been on a great ride this year. Chicago's normally at the top always, and then they go into the bracket and they're always in a top position. I feel like you need to play great teams along the way and have your losses along the way. And I feel like that's the boost that Chicago would need going into champs. KC wants is going to need to win here to prove that they're number one. I think they're going to be a little bit hungrier. I think they might be a little bit more physical. I'm going to give it to KC. We just have to make sure that we can get a +3 advantage going in the front because I think Chicago catches in those games. Chicago versus San Antonio, I'm going to take Chicago there. I'm done.
There we go. That's the the whole bracket laid out for you guys. Yeah, we're gonna have some really interesting matchups. I'm really interested to see the top three, especially. We're gonna get some great seedings. So, just a reminder, the number one seed will end up being either Kansas City or Chicago, and then whoever, down the line. And that's gonna give us a great look going into MLQ champs, especially as we look at Eastern Conference championships next week. And very excited to see these teams kind of show out. Hopefully, we get some good quad ball, some good individual performances, some good team performances. And with that, let's move into fantasy because, as you guys know, since all of our Central Conference teams are playing this weekend, we have all of those players to select from. And yet, me and Nick, our lineups are practically almost the same.
I don't know how it happened. I truly don't. No. Whitney, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I'm gonna start off with, have to take my goat, Izzy Ramirez. That's an easy pick for me every single time. One of the best, female chasers in the league. Gotta give her flowers. Number two, I'm gonna go with Ryan Mejio of Kansas City. I feel like that's another, points bucket. This was another thing I was considering. Do I go with Ryan? Do I go with Vincent? But, I've been going with Ryan pretty consistently throughout this past season, and I'm gonna keep the train going. My third chaser is going to be Miguel Esparza from San Antonio. He just dropped 15 goals last week, and, I don't even know how many against Houston. And I have to capitalize off on that. And then finally, my last chaser is going to be Liam Zock from Chicago, another player that's been having a great season so far, putting up some serious numbers. Hopefully that will continue, especially a high intensity game as Chicago plays against Kansas City. My beaters are going to be Camila Rodriguez. I have taken Camila every single time that Chicago has played. Not going to stop now. And then I'm also going to go with Baldy from San Antonio. Very excited to see them play against Minneapolis. And I feel like, San Antonio is pretty much guaranteed two games, especially if they beat Minneapolis, two series, I mean. And that means a lot of numbers. So hopefully, we'll get some big numbers from the San Antonio people. And then my seeker, I'm gonna go with Noyes. Hopefully, some big high intensity moments. Noyes can come up clutch for Chicago, get some big points. And then finally, utility, I'm gonna go with Joe Goulet. I want those chaser points and I want those seeker points. So hopefully my lineup gonna get in the top 10 for the first time ever. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it potentially could have if we got him a few stats, but who knows?
Yeah.
Moving into to my lineup, it's tough, right? Houston's only going to be able to get to play 2 to 3 games this weekend because of the Toronto forfeit, as well as the winner of KC versus Chicago would only get to play potentially 2 or 3 games. So the middle games and the losers are going to be able to play more games, which means more points. You're right. You're making a double bet here. Regardless, Miguel is going to get to play at least 4 games. I'm expecting 20 goals right there out of 4 games, especially playing Minneapolis and Houston. I'm expecting 20 goals. So Miguel was an easy lock for me there. Mejio, depending on win or loss, I still think Ryan's going to get a lot of stops and a lot of run for KC, especially in a tighter contest. So I think I'm going to go Ryan there. Um, Lauren Smith, again, I think Lauren is going to have a great series, particularly um, if Chicago decides to play how I believe they're going to play. Like Lauren is going to have a great series for KC to win, and I think Lauren is easily capable of that. So I'm going to go Lauren there. My fourth is going to be Riley Moman. We saw what Riley did in the series against San Antonio earlier this season, and the expectation that they're going to have to play Minneapolis. I think that's going to be another 10 goals series, especially if Minneapolis can pull out a catch and take a game off of Houston potentially, which I don't believe it will happen. But in the case it does, I just think Riley's going to get more opportunity to run there. And I think those are going to be at least 10 to 15 goals there during that entire series. Beater wise, I wrote down Camilla and Matt. I'm actually going to change it to Camilla and Baldy because I think Baldy's actually going to get some more run there. As you were saying, I was like, they are playing a little bit more games, like guaranteed compared to Chicago. Matt Brown might only come through at championships, and that's it. I don't know. We don't have rosters, and
We
I
don't. We don't.
and I think Baldy will probably be there. So I think I'm actually going to go Camilla and Baldy there. Joe Goulet probably going to get some catches on the weekend, especially if Houston is not going to play. Actually, let's take it back. In the San Antonio game, if we don't know what's happening in the San Antonio secret room. Don't know. Joe Goulet is going to be out there. If Joe can even get a minute at this snitch, probably going to catch that. Same thing if they happen to lose and they go on and play Houston. I think the same thing is going to happen there. So I think Joe's going to get a lot of run at Seeker this weekend, which could possibly be like maybe I switch this, but I don't know who else is seeking on the weekend, so maybe I'll take that away. But my last one is going to be Noyes, both as a beater and then potentially could hop in the Seeker game depending on what Chicago likes to see. So we'll see. But those are my fantasy lineup, and I'm feeling good. Potentially 2 weeks ago, I was in the top 10. We still don't have stats from that. I don't know about this week. If I'm in the top 10, we don't have stats for this. MLQ, what's going on with stats?
Yeah, we gotta have a conversation, guys. Okay. First of all, MLQ says in tea time that we're not the number one quad ball media news outlet, and then now we don't have stats. A coincidence? I think not. We gotta make a change.
And we don't have quad whips. Where are
Yeah.
quad whips?
Yeah,
No
the
quad
quad quiz.
whips. No stats. What's next? Are we just not gonna have no quad balls? I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I don't know. But in better news, though, keep your eye out for USQ All-Star Weekend. Rosters were due, well, today's Thursday. So that is, rosters were due yesterday, I believe. I don't know. I'm on the committee. All I know is I submitted my roster. But those should be dropping soon. Very excited to see the different regions show out, see all their superstars go up to Middlebury in the weekend in October. Next week we're going to be back with our recap of the Central Conference champs and previewing Eastern Conference champs. And we have a lot to talk about, so we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, we'll see you there with a special interview. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, do it all. We'll see you next week.